doctoral degree in public policy and management from Wharton. He was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of California, Berkeley. He taught at the University of Oklahoma for 16 years before returning to India to teach at IIM Bangalore. Thank you, sir, for agreeing to speak here. Dr. K. Madan Gopal is a health professional with more than 28 years of experience. He specializes in issues related to health reforms with a focus to strengthening India's public healthcare system. He is currently senior consultant with Niti Aayog. Sir, it's a great pleasure to welcome you today. Today we have an august and informed gathering of stalwarts who we expect will contribute immensely to the discussion. On behalf of Policy Circle, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sajna, for that address. I will not take too much of your time because there are many others who are far more knowledgeable than me in this gathering. So without wasting any of your time, taking much too much of your time, I would like to invite Dr. Aruna Sharma, who is former...
I'll just speak first.
Right, sir. Okay, so I'll just quickly ask Mr. Suresh Prabhu to come and address the gathering. Thank you, sir.
So good morning, friends. And my sincere apologies that I came late because I was searching in the other ILC where this, I was looking probably there will be some smoke coming, so I know it is something to do with tobacco. But there was no smoke and therefore there was no fire, and then I had to come here, firefighting, to come here and attend this program. So I'm sorry for that. So I'm really impressed because my dear friend and one of the most distinguished parliamentarian and a very learned man is here, Raju. So I think he'll speak, so I don't have anything more to say, more than what he's going to say. And my very distinguished friend and who was my colleague in the government, Aruna Sharma ji, whom I worked with. So she is a woman of steel as well as she knows IT, so I think she's the one who will contribute even better. And of course, he being a very trained professional in health matters, I think they are the right people to speak. So I am not going to really say anything. I have to go for some other programs as well. So I thought I will seek permission from the chair and speak first. And as you can see, after their speaking, I have nothing else to add. So I am also speaking to begin with. Thank you for organizing the event through Policy Circle, because normally the challenge of policy is it moves always in circles. And therefore nobody knows what the policy is because it is still going into the rounds and rounds and circles and circles. I have dealt with policy making, policy implementation for a fairly long time. This is my 26th year in the parliament, and the last one I'm going to quit and join Raju in pursuit of academics. I become a chancellor of university. I'm also now the visiting professor in London School of Economics, so I would be doing that. But I've seen in policy, the biggest problem is I had 11 cabinet positions, so different levels of policy I've seen. The problem is first, whenever you want to make a policy, who decides what the policy should be? One of the big problem in policy is that because we have a sovereign responsibility as a government to make policies. In fact, the basic job of government, and actually for that matter even parliament, is to make policies. Of course, unfortunately, the parliaments don't make policies. This is one of the reform that we must bring into the parliament, is that we have a right to choose a government, technically, because the majority in the parliament only forms the executive. Also, we have a right, and particularly in the standing committees, we actually really do a lot of evaluation as well as so-called grilling of the government, the executive. But still, policy making should be, in my opinion, along with the executive, should also be the responsibility of the legislature, because they represent the people directly. So they will have the understanding about what are the possibilities of the policy getting into some roadblocks, or for that matter, what are the concerns of the people that should be reflected in the policy to begin with. In fact, we have always seen that the best policy that can be implemented is a policy which is acceptable to the people at large. And we have seen there are some state governments who have prohibition. they don't allow the consumption of liquor. I don't know whether the consumption has gone down or has increased in those states. But because people are not willing to accept that because they have a habit of drinking, so they will continue to drink. So this is one of the challenge of policy, is that when you make policy, you should take into consideration the people's priorities interest. Another good example is that the countries where the environmental policies are implemented the most are the countries where the environmental awareness is the highest. So in the absence of awareness, there is no acceptance, there is no some receptivity to the ideas that are enshrined into the policies. So policy making is a very complex exercise and therefore has to be done with a lot of caution and care. And one of the best way to do that is to have consultation. That's the best way to come out with the best policy that you can actually finally implement and get all the stakeholders on board. And if you do that, there's a very good chance that you'll actually succeed in implementing the policy. The world, that on one side, there is a now enough irrefutable evidence available about what happens if you consume tobacco beyond a particular level and quantity. That's proven beyond doubt. At the same time, that has not reduced the consumption. So just imagine. Now, there are anti-drug agencies all over the world. The US always, not only now they realize that they have to go to the source. They first went down to Colombia, so all the Colombian drug cartels came to Mexico, so closer to the border. So they went out, like right now the Russia started a war with Ukraine saying that the NATO is coming closer to me. So those two countries, Sweden and Finland, were never part of NATO, even during the worst of the Cold War, they are now joined NATO. So always by going after them, so we have to find out very complex, it's a human mind issue. You can bring down the consumption, you can actually attack all this when the mind changes. And that's a very complex issue. Mindset change is something which is not going to happen in a hurry, but will have to be done in an appropriate manner. And there's other way that you can do it is, if not eliminate it completely, at least reduce the adverse impact to a great extent possible. And that may be doable. This is possible by changing the way the tobacco is processed, tobacco is consumed, tobacco is available in different products, because cigarette is not just the only way that you can use tobacco. There are many other ways that it happens. And particularly, we have seen the so-called pan masalas have come up over a period of time. And there are, I don't want to say, one of the senior leader in India used to put tobacco in his mouth. Then he has suffered hugely because of that. So it always happens. And the best way to therefore address this issue is to work in this complex ecosystem with all the stakeholders and also keep coming out with imaginative communication to engage with the community at large. And that's the best way to do it. Anyway, thank you very much for inviting me. Probably you wanted, in all the stakeholders, one of the non-smoker as a stakeholder, right? So that's what I'm here. So I'm thank you for that. And I really congratulate the organizers for taking this initiative, and such three distinguished stalwarts, as well as I can see many more in the audience, will enrich the deliberations as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suresh Prabhuji. We know you're in a hurry. I would like to ask all the participants to one more time give Mr. Prabhu a round of applause and thank him for being here for his participation. Suresh Prabhuji, thank you. All right. Now it's time for the presidential address. And I must thank Suresh Prabhuji once more, although he's not here, but he did speak in his characteristic style. He is, after all, a politician, a good one at that, a senior one at that. Now it's time for me to ask, Aruna Sharma ji needs no introduction, former IT and Steel Secretary, Government of India, a powerhouse, if I may say so, in the field of policy and policy making and implementation. She will deliver the presidential address. Aruna Sharma ji.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And I have very, very experienced and distinguished speakers who are going to speak after me, Mr. Gowda and Mr. Mohan, as well as the next session. I must compliment Policy Circle both Anil Nair and you who have made this happen. And Policy Circle, I will just say one sentence, is one thing which is completely apolitical and analyzes the subject on merits. And therefore, the impact is very, very good of the various articles that get published on this circle. And that's a space now they are growing. That's a space, unique space they are occupying when we move ahead. Now, coming to the topic. Definitely one good thing that has happened in the tobacco is that you have made non-smoking zones very, very clear. Now it is not fashionable any longer to smoke in public. So you have earmarked zones. So I think that's one credit definitely goes to the regulator, which has come up as an accepted norm of behavior everywhere. And that has made a lot of difference into the passive smokers as well as the spread to the other people. And along travel, another thing which we have traveled when I was a teenager and I studied my college education in Hyderabad. So there we used to have a huge poster of Jackie Shroff. And as a teenager, quite impressed, right? Who is to smoke a cigarette, right? And then we have this Mr. Deepak, who was a model then. So these two were the icons for the teenage girls then, and we used to look forward to it. And from there, we have graduated. Today, Akshay Kumar saying that this is not a heroism. Ye hero-panti nahi hai. And that is another big change that has happened, the way the things are perceived, the way the things are exhibited, the way the things are going ahead with it. So I think that's a great achievement. But as Mr. Suresh Prabhu rightly said, of these warnings on the cigarettes and other things, like before this seminar, I was just going through the Google, and I was horrified to see that the number of smokers in India, tobacco consumers, is going up. From 184 million, it has gone to 250 million. If that is the number, then it looks like the consumption is going up, and all our efforts, which I said before, is not having its impact. And the worst, when I deep dived into the data, I found that 10 years to 15 years is 10% of this number. And women is, and therefore when we are looking at regulation, we have to think out of the box that yes, we have to continue with public shaming of non-smoking in the public place. We have to continue with I've seen deaths because of spirit drinking whenever there was a ban on liquor. Right. So in the sense, it doesn't help at all. So therefore, it is very important to go by educating, which is a slow process, but also guillotining it by a sense of fear as we are proceeding ahead. So I think now we must listen to the experts who are with us into a very, very sensitive subject, but very valid subject, very important subject. And I will just say one thing in the end. When ITC went into other products, that is besides tobacco, there was a big debate because at that time they were entering into Madhya Pradesh for this Ashirwad Atta because MP Gehu was the best Gehu and it was giving them a premium. So we asked them to change the brand. And there was a big debate going on. And then they said, no, we will use ITC. Let people understand we are not only tobacco. But you must have seen the size is minuscule and Ashirwad comes out big. So that's the way it has gone in for. They are still working on that ITC brand because that's their identity. So fair enough. There's no problem on that. But very important that they evolve themselves into a new identity. So that is very, very important that yes, smoking cannot disappear, but it can be reduced. And these numbers are something to watch out. Let us not at least exceed 250 million by reducing it, by adopting every purpose that is needed. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aruna Sharma ji. Thank you for your kind words and the presidential address. Now, ladies and gentlemen, into the meat of it. Our keynote speakers today include Professor Rajiv Gowda, as mentioned already.